CFB Community from Edmond, Oklahoma asked, if you could go back and relive or experience in person for the first time one moment in college football history, which moment would you choose? I didn't go back. I guess I did go back a little ways. It's almost 20 years ago now. It still feels a little more recent than that. I would want to go back to that '05 National Championship game, the Rose Bowl, Vince Young in Texas, Matt Leinart and USC, and I would want to see that thing. I would want to be one of like 4,000 people it felt like were on the sidelines. Far less security on the sidelines in those days. I would want to see that. I've experienced it on TV. I know the Keith Jackson call, and I know all the drama that led up to what it was like having it come through my TV screen, but I don't know what it was like in person. And a lot of people think, some people think in a way college football peaked that night. Like in the pro wrestling world, people think pro wrestling peaked with Austin Rock at WrestleMania 17. People look at college football and they say, this night right here, in a lot of ways, it would never get better than it got on that night. You never know when those moments are happening until long after the fact. But I'd love to see that one. And I would love to, I don't know if you can do this. I don't know what the rules are for going back in time. I would love to go back to that Rose Bowl, and I would love to see Vince Young in Texas, and I would love to see Matt Leinart in USC, Reggie Bush, by the way, on that team too. And I would also love to view it through the prism of kind of knowing what the future held. Because what you couldn't know is what technology was about to do. Now, you're thinking about the teams, right? You're thinking about, wow, you could have seen that Vince Young run to the corner of the end zone. You could have seen that back and forth affair. Yeah, all that's good. All that's baked in. Yes, that's why I'm choosing this game. Texas had 556 total yards. USC had 574 and lost because of that critical 2 in the turnover column. But I'm speaking about technology because of this. You know how worked up I get sometimes if you listen to or you watch the show. You know how worked up I get about the atmosphere at live events these days, not just college football, live events in general. Technology has done some great things. Wonderful things. I use my phone constantly. So I am not the kind of person who gets on people for always being on their phone. However, at sporting events, I do think that the possession of smartphones, the modern day cell phone, has been very detrimental to the overall atmosphere. Because if you are recording things, you're probably not making noise. You're certainly not immersed in or lost in the moment. And that was not the case back then. The reason I go back to the '05 Rose Bowl is, aside from just making the argument, hey, maybe it's the best championship game of all time, maybe it's the best moment in the history of college football, I could listen to all that. I would add, it was the last great moment in the pre-smartphone era. Because not too long after that, we were about to advance to the point where cell phone video was good enough that people started recording video in stadiums. And so every big moment, if the Vince Young moment, for example, were to happen modern day, you wouldn't be looking at a bunch of people's hands in the air, and you wouldn't be looking at a bunch of flash bolts from cameras going off. You would be looking at a bunch of phones up in the air. Because you know that if you go to any live event, if you watch it on TV, that's what a crowd looks like now. And it is what it is. You pay your money for your ticket. You reserve the right to do whatever you want to, as long as you don't hamper anyone else or put anyone else's safety in jeopardy. But that doesn't mean it makes for the best environment. And so I always look back at those moments. You could go to baseball, like I said, pro wrestling. You could look at a concert, or you could look at college football. And I always look at that moment, that period of time, like early to mid 2000s, the great moments that happened then. They have greatness attached to them, but they also have the added hallmark of being some of the last great moments in the pre-smartphone era. And for all the great things that those smartphones have done, like I said, I use mine daily. I really would like to go back to a time where when people went into sporting events or concerts or whatnot, they just kind of suspended themselves. And they left the phone in the back pocket, and they just got lost in the moment, and everybody is just full throat on third down, on fourth down, and they're totally lost in the game. Instead of sitting in section 248 worried about whether you're going to get video that's going to suck and no one cares about it because you could just go home and watch the broadcast feed anyway, and they got a lot better view than you did. But I get it. I get it. It's a classic situation where we have to wrap it with the phrase, "It is what it is."